Is there a conflict between your spiritual and material nature? Do you feel acquiring great wealth compromises your higher spiritual values? Find out what may block you from getting what you want. And on our green tips, what's in a green car? Next on Living Smart. You might have seen him in the movie The Secret. John Demartini, a doctor of chiropractic, gave up his practice to become a philosopher, teacher, and an author 37 years ago. He founded the Demartini Institute, and he has spent the past 3 decades lecturing on human potential, self-improvement topics, and financial success from a spiritual perspective. He finds many people wrongly feel guilty for desiring great wealth. He has published over 40 books in 26 different languages, and today we discuss one of them, how to make a hell of a profit and still get to heaven. Dr. Demartini, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You know, it is strange, but people do feel guilty. A lot of people feel guilty about being very wealthy or even thinking of getting a lot of money or making a lot of money. Why is that?
Well, I think that they have been possibly indoctrinated with the idea that somehow you're not going to get through the eye of the needle if you have some wealth kind of thing, and that it's not so great to have money. But, you know, I always think that money is a representation of services that you've rendered to people. Mm-hmm. And if you are willing to go and do greater service, you deserve to have a greater abundance in your life. Right. And there's nothing wrong with being of service to people.
Right.
And I think that many people have seen people spend money in a way that goes against their values, and they've labeled it maybe negatively.
Right.
But in reality, there's so many great things that can be done with money. And so I think that if we dedicate our lives to being of great service to people and do great things with money, it is a great thing.
So the focus has to be different. But one rule you feel very strongly about is services are due. A payment is due when services are rendered. Why is that so important?
Well, when somebody does a great service, I'm sure you've been in a situation where you've done a great service to somebody, and then you had to wait a period of time, and then you wondered if you were going to get paid.
Oh, yes.
And then you had an anxiety about them paying, and you kind of felt like, did you do something that's not working?
Right, right.
And then they have the pressure and the guilt of not paying, and there's this incomplete. You either have fear of the future or guilt of the past whenever it's not complete and done. And then you're not really present with life.
Right.
And that's where, when you're in a state of presence, you have more inspiration.
Right, the power of now.
The power of now. So, so by having an incompletion, trying to get something for nothing or give something for nothing and have an incompletion and not being present, I think, in a sense, can hold people back from being really present and have clear-mindedness.
Right. Another principle you care a lot about is the principle of fair exchange. Tell me about that.
Well, it's just like I was saying, that if a person tries to get something for nothing, recently I had an individual attempt to do that in our services, and they didn't feel complete about it, and we had a discussion about it, and once we got it cleared and got it in fair exchange, that both parties were at ease. But prior to that, there was this incomplete.
Right.
And so I always say that it's not wise to try to get something for nothing or give something for nothing, but to have fair exchange where both parties feel that they've done a service, received a reward, and now feel complete and want to continue doing that relationship dynamic.
And that may not require money. It might be a trade, some sort of, but you have to give something in return. Giving, receiving, the balance.
You know, I was in Africa doing programs, and even when I work with townships that are extremely impoverished, and I have young people in the programs, because I do a Young Adults Inspired Destiny program there, we ask the kids never to just expect something for entitlement, but to live with empowerment by making sure that they find something in their own talents and their own gifts that they always have to contribute in exchange, so they get in the habit of making a fair exchange in the world, because it helps their own self-image and their self-worth by having fairness that way. So instead of just giving them something and making them used to an entitled process where they're supposed to get something for nothing, I make sure that they find and dig inside them and get creative to come up with some sort of creative talent that they can make that exchange with.
Exactly.
And they feel that they've earned it.
Right.
And that makes them go out in the world knowing that they're there to find services to provide,
to provide,
and that then to ask for what they want. And both people on both sides grow from this.
Another important factor, though, is you say you have to appreciate the value of money. Tell me about that.
Well, when we were you might say in the earliest stages, I'm going to use Adam and Eve. I'm going to use that just for fun. Maybe she was trying to buy some shoes and they had to exchange it some other, an apple or something. But reality is, in the early stages, before we had class structures and before we had differences in labor, we really didn't have an economic exchange, a medium called money.
Right.
We may have used grains or some other vehicle. But it's still an exchange, because as we differentiate and start to have different classes and different specialties in occupation, your hour may be different than the value of somebody else's hour.
Right.
So you had to have some sort of medium that was a measurement that allowed people to have fairness.
Right.
So money is a way of allowing people to have fair exchange.
Right.
And so it is neither good nor evil. It is just a means of exchanging so people can feel complete and present. Mm-hmm. And that is what makes them able to live more an inspired life. I remember something from the great book, the Book of Wealth. Mm-hmm. And it was talking about an ancient Egyptian, and he said that spirit without matter is expressionless, and matter without spirit is motionless. And one of those, the two driving forces of the human being are both spirit and matter. Doing something altruistically that inspires for humanity and receiving the rewards materially for the individual. Mm-hmm. Those two mechanisms are the two greatest components of wealth building and wholeness building, which is what wealth really means.
Right. Well, and that's why there's a relationship between self-worth and net worth.
Well, whenever you are beating yourself up and feeling like shameful or guiltful or whatever, you tend to think, well, I need to do something. Everybody else is more important to me, and you tend to go into the altruistic side. When you get into the narcissistic side, when you start to think you're puffed up and kind of, self-righteous, I call it, now you go into the narcissistic side. But the exaggeration of yourself or the minimization of yourself keeps you from your real self. Mm-hmm. And when you're really balanced, you realize you're not trying to give something for nothing altruistically. You're not trying to get something for nothing narcissistically. You're giving something for something, which is, in a sense, the true nature. And you're having what I call reflective consciousness, where you're not seeing yourself above or below anybody. You're seeing a reflection of everyone in you.
Right.
As reflection. So real spiritual expression really is the mastery of money. And I think that somehow it's been misconstrued by many people.
Now, Americans have a problem saving money. And if we're going to get realistic about money, we got to start saving. So what prevents people from saving money?
Well, it's interesting that I believe, looking at the stats of at least one reference, that we have actually increased our savings. We were at 0 to 1% in America. Now we're up about 3, 4, 5%. So I think that the so-called crisis has actually been a value.
Been a good thing for us,
right.
In a way.
Because now we're starting to value money. We were valuing debt, I think. Now we're valuing credit value.
Debt, yes.
But I always say that if you never save money and never invest money, you will work your life as a slave for money.
Right.
And the very people that negate it, money's not important, really live their whole life trying to work for it. But the people that appreciate it and learn how to manage it wisely and bring order to it and start to save it, invest it, they have money starting to work for them, and they become its master. And in that process, now, in a sense of seeing it as this evil thing that you want to stay away from, you now appreciate it and what you can do with it.
How much money should we be saving, and when do you go from saving to start investing?
Well, I believe that it's wise to save before you invest, before you ever speculate. And many times people speculate before they even save.
Right.
But you need to have some cushions. I recommend, for many years I've recommended at least 3 months of cushion. But now I'd say maybe 3 to 6 months of cushion.
Right, the way things are now.
Yeah, but I do believe that, because I think the value of saving money is very amazing. When you actually have $10 saved, you get to hang out with 10 heirs. When you have $100 saved, you hang out with 100 heirs. When you're $1,000 saved, 1,000 heirs. $1 million saved, you hang out with millionaires.
Right.
So you get a different association when you start to have some wealth. But you also get greater opportunities, greater ideas that you get to experience, greater quality clients, more stability. And people, when they have some wealth, people want to be around them for some reason.
Right,
it's the more wealth you have, the more people are flock to you.
Right.
So I really believe that the value of saving money is not just the compound interest, not just the security, but the ideas, the opportunities, the associations, the stabilities, and many other things that come when you start to accumulate some wealth.
How do you respond to people who say, well, I just don't make enough money to save money?
Well, I tell people that as long as you manage money poorly, you'll keep having money taken away. But when you begin to manage money wisely, more money comes.
Right.
And when thy purse is full, more money enters thy purse, is an ancient proverb from Babylonia. So I think that my experience of people is there's no risk in saving money.
Right.
The worst thing that can happen if you save and attempt to save money is that you can always take the money to pay your bill.
Right.
But if you actually save it, you will discover that if you put something away, I don't care if it's 1% or up to 10% or more, you put it away, kind of a mysterious thing starts happening. You start to attract opportunities and ideas and things to you to receive more money. And you find out you don't miss it.
It's why you say you have to bless abundance, because the more you bless abundance and live in gratitude, and we'll talk about gratitude, the more you attract that.
Well, I believe that when people are grateful for who they are and get to what they get to do and who they're with, more people want to be around them. They value that.
Right.
There's a natural tendency to want to live that way. When I've asked thousands of people across the world, what would you do if you had only 24 hours to live? They would say, I want to share my gratitude and love for the people who've contributed to my life. And when I ask people how many want to be appreciated and loved for who they are, they all put their hands up. So gratitude and love is like the pinnacle of priorities. And when people demonstrate that, there's a magnetism and there's a drawing of opportunity to people that do, and people value that. So I think when you're doing a service with gratitude, it was Peter Lynch, who wrote books on Wall Street. He said that when he goes in and invests in a stock and he goes to see the company that he's about to invest in, he's looking for 4 things. He's looking for people that love their work, they're grateful for their job, they're inspired by the vision, and they're enthusiastically working.
Right.
And when they have those 4 states, he knows that that company is going to grow because there's the spirit, the soul is in the corporate body.
Right.
The spirit of love and gratitude is in the life. And I think that that's a yearning for everyone. And I do believe that true wealth is that.
Right.
And when people live that way, they draw more wealth to them because people want to do business with those people.
And that's when you talk about the power of purpose, the power of vision in your life.
Well, my observation is that every human being has a set of priorities, a set of values in their life. And whenever they're setting goals that are congruent with their highest values, and they're really aligned, and they can't wait to get up in the morning and do what it is,
Right.
and they're inspired by it, and the ancient Greeks called that the telos, the greatest end in mind, that's their mission for life. That's their identity and their inspiration. When they do that, that's where their greatest self-worth is, because they're willing to do whatever it takes to fulfill that. But if they live according to their lower values and have to have motivation on the outside to do it, they don't have as much confidence in themselves, they don't succeed as well,
Right.
They don't feel greater self-worth,
Right.
and they hold themselves back financially.
Well, what about those people who say, well, you say you have to do what you love and the money will come? Well, sometimes the money doesn't come.
Well, I would disagree on that. Doing what you love assists, but you have to appreciate money. There's 3 components of growing wealth that I've observed. One is you have to be willing to go and look into humanity and into the world and find some service that you, with your talents, are willing to give. You have to find something that's truly a need and a service in the world. You know, I ask people, and I know this is going to sound kind of odd, but I ask people, how many of you are using Microsoft Windows? Everybody puts their hand up. I said, now you know why he's a billionaire.
Right, exactly.
He's found something that serves people.
Right.
So find and dig, and instead of sitting there wondering about how you're going to pay your bills, why not wonder about how you can serve?
Right.
Concentrate on the flowers, not the weeds.
Right.
Concentrate on filling your day with what would be of service, and watch what happens. So the first one is you have to basically dedicate your life to finding something that you would love to do and serve. The second thing is you want to make sure you're doing something. You want to value yourself. Because if you don't value yourself, even if you do a great service, you won't keep any of it.
Right.
You won't save any of it. You won't value you. So many people, when I ask them, what's the value of having wealth, they write down all the things they can spend it on, but they don't ever write down the things on how to manage it and how to accumulate it and how to build wealth.
Right.
So what they do is they take money and they immediately put it back out. And there's wisdom in doing that for the economy, but there's also wisdom in taking a portion of it and saving it.
Right, keeping it. You also spend a lot of time talking about managing your emotions to be wealthy. Why is that so important?
Well, when the stock market is up, people get a dopamine and oxytocin rush. They tend to exaggerate their capacity. They tend to take an ego and boost up their ego. And when they do, they start to speculate and start to use other people's money to go and gamble. And then when they get crunched, as we just recently went through, they get humbled. And then they they really feel bad, and then they beat themselves up, and they get kind of shamed and frightened. And now what they do is they usually sell out at the bottom. So as Warren Buffett wisely put, until you can manage your emotions, don't ever expect to manage money. Right. You have to be able to have some degree of stability, because when the stock market goes up, you're actually paying more for the stock. So that's not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
And when the stock market goes down, you actually get more stock for less price. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. So the wise investor knows that whether it goes up or down, compared to a long-term vision, that's really insignificant. They're looking at a long-term vision, they're investing towards the mean, and they're being patient, and they're holding on to a vision, and they keep investing in dollar cost averaging their money.
Right.
But the person who is basically trying to gamble in the market and try to time all the market,
play games.
They're playing games. Their emotions are they're punters and speculators that usually lose their money in the long run.
What about when you say, well, you have to have a vision for wealth, and so you're imagining this great house and wonderful cars and trips all over the world, whatever. Is that enough? Just the vision?
Well, no.
You got to do it with something else.
When I was asked, I put together a DVD set called The Wealth Wisdom of the Ages, and it was I was asked in South Africa to put this 1 hour special together, and we filmed it, and it was a summary of the Book of Wealth. And that's a 10-volume set created by Hubert Hal Bancroft in about 1896, I think. And it is the summary of the greatest individuals and the greatest organizations and institutions that ever created wealth in the last 6,700 years. And who created the hanging walls of Babylon and the Great China Wall and the pyramids at Giza and these kind of things. And one thing that stood out when I saw that is that the people who were those that were driving these visions to create these great edifices were people who had great humanitarian purposes. They were inspired by doing something magnificent for the world. But they also had such a self-esteem that they felt that they deserved to be the one that did that. They deserved to be royal. They deserved to be kings. They deserved to be vastly fortunate. And so they had incredible self-worth, but they also had incredible altruistic service focus. And they understood the means and the value of money. And so I think that it's wise to have all that.
Right.
And give yourself permission to do extraordinary things for the world and live an extraordinary life.
Right.
I'm a firm believer in that.
What do you think, though, is the major... It sounds like, obviously, the mind, but what is the major factor that hinders great wealth?
I was speaking with a gentleman who's passed away now, Foster Hibbard, who used to work with Napoleon Hill, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich and the Laws of Success. Right. And I used to lecture with him back about 20-something years ago. And I asked him that question. I said, well, what do you think is the number one thing that blocks people from growing wealth? And I knew I had my idea about it. He says he thought it was guilt. And he said that every time you do something you think is a mistake, or you think you do something that's a harm to somebody, you feel guilty or shamed or whatever, you feel that you're less than, and your worth is down. And people that do that typically end up spending their money and giving it to others. And the people that are proud, they tend to think, well, I deserve, and they keep. So he said that that's the number one thing. So he recommended that go out and do of great service to people, do some sort of acts that you feel great about yourself. I have found another one, and that is to write down whatever you've done in your life that you thought is a mistake or you felt guilty about or shameful about, and find out how did it serve you and how did it serve others, the people involved, and clear it. Because so often we carry around shame and guilt over something that's not even true.
Right.
I have to, many years ago I had this girlfriend, and I was very infatuated with her, and she ended up leaving me for another guy. And he was
that never happens. Okay.
No, he was a protege of mine. I was the one that trained him. That was the funny part. And he was a lovely guy, and they really did match better.
Right.
But I was infatuated and blinded by this infatuation. And anyway, when she left everything else, she kind of felt guilty that she didn't really communicate that to me. She just kind of went out. And it was 13 years later before I really got to have a chat with her. And when she did, by then, I got to write a book about that story, so I capitalized on it. But 13 years later, she came up to me and she wanted to chat with me, and she says, I'm so sorry. I said, why are you feeling sorry? I said, that was the greatest lesson on relationships I ever had. I'm so grateful if that happened. I would have not been the right person for you. It was a great gift, and you now have a beautiful family, and there was no mistake in that.
Right.
But she had assumed that there was some sort of a mistake and that there was some sort of harm in there. And many times we carry around shame and guilt over something that's not even true, and we've never taken the time to look at how it turned out. There's a higher order in life that we sometimes don't see. And we have to look again and go back and do it and clear that shame and guilt so we can feel worthy to receive.
And that's what you learned from that? That it was what it was and accepted, and it was something you needed to go through.
If I hadn't gone through that, I definitely would have not been able to do some of the things I do today. I'm very grateful for her to do that.
So it kind of takes away the drama from all these things when you learn to accept things as from a higher spiritual point of view.
I like to go beyond acceptance. I like to say thank you. Because anything you can't say thank you for is your baggage. And anything you can say thank you for is your fuel.
Yeah, even you have to be thankful even for suffering sometimes.
I have an exercise that I do in one of my programs called the Breakthrough Experience. And what we do is we make a list of everything that's ever happened in your life that you thought was not magnificent. Somebody criticized you, somebody rejected you, somebody stole from you, whatever it is. And go look for the other side.
Right.
When somebody rejected you, who is accepting it? When somebody stole from you, who is being generous to you? And put the thing back in balance. And when people do that, they're astonished at what they discover that they had oblivious to. They didn't see the other side, but it's always there.
Right.
And once they did, they realized that there was nothing out of order in the whole time. They had just assumed there was. And when they did, they freed their mind and they were able to feel thankful. And they didn't have the fears and guilts that keep people from being present and inspired, grateful and loving, enthused about life.
Or the victimhood. Oh, it was done to me, and right?
Yeah, but why would you want to be a victim of your history when
Exactly.
you can be a master of your destiny?
I like that. Tell me about heaven, because you describe heaven in a certain way in the book, and I think it's very interesting.
Well, I always say that heaven is gratitude, and hell is ingratitude. If you're not grateful for life, that's hell. Mm-hmm. And if you are grateful for your life and the people and the things you get to do, when you're living according to your highest value and you're inspired and you can't wait to get up in the morning, that's heaven.
Right.
And when you feel like you've been productive and be of service to people and got rewarded and had some prosperity for the day, that's heaven. But when you feel like you're ungrateful and you have unrealistic expectations that aren't matching reality, that's hell. And I think that sometimes we're not seeing the higher order, that which is really to be grateful for. And we sometimes are living in a state where we have unrealistic expectations and we're angry. I always say that anytime you have the ABCs of negativity, which is anger and aggression, blame and betrayal, criticism and challenge, it's because we've projected a fantasy of unrealistic expectations on others or ourselves to live by.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. I also enjoyed very much, because you have a stereotype of the story of the doctor and the assistant. You know, we expect the doctors to be rich and the assistant to be a secretary who doesn't make enough money. But you shared that story in the book, and I thought it was very interesting.
I was in Florida, and I was speaking to a large group of doctors, and this one doctor came up to me afterwards. He says, "Can I consult with you?" And I said, "Certainly." So we got over in a private area, and we went consulting. He said, I'm in practice. I do about $6 million a year, $6.29 million a year, I think it was. And but I'm having to borrow $320-something thousand for money for taxes this year. I said, "You make $6-something million and you have to borrow money for taxes?" He says, "Yeah." And so I realized that here's a guy that's making lots of money. He's doing a lot of service, but his value system is dictating the way it's spent. See, the hierarchy of one's values dictates their financial destiny. And he had a higher value on fancy cars, fancy parties, fancy travel, fancy artwork, big homes, everything else. He didn't have a value on paying his taxes. He didn't have a value on saving his money. And so it didn't matter how much money he made. He still, with this value system, was going to be having to borrow money. And what was irony is he had an assistant. When I went to his office, he had an assistant that was making $2,000 a month, but was saving 20% of that. So she was saving $400 a month, and she was actually moving towards financial independence and was on track for financial independence before he would be. So it has nothing to do with how much money you make. It has everything to do with how you manage what you make.
And how you keep it. How much you keep. How do you know you're living smart?
You know you're living smart when you have a hard time getting the smile off your face. You can't wait to get up in the morning and do what you really love to do. You're thankful for the people that you are surrounded by. And at the end of the day, you can look in the mirror and you go, wow.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate having you here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now on our green tips, the new green cars coming into the marketplace with Houston Area Research Center Director of Sustainable Transportation, David Hitchcock.
Sustainable vehicles that have less environmental impact that are coming on the market are highly efficient vehicles. We're talking about vehicles that on a miles per gallon basis would be anywhere from 80 to over 100 miles per gallon. Those are the vehicles that are going to be sustainable. The big differences in the types of vehicles that are coming onto the marketplace are basically the drivetrains. We are seeing electric vehicles of a variety coming in, rather than liquid fuel vehicles. The big differentiation is vehicles that are relying more on electricity as a part of that vehicle, whether it's a battery electric vehicle, a hybrid electric vehicle, a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, or a fuel cell vehicle. So there's a lot of different technologies within each of those categories. Liquid fuels, the new fuels that are coming into the market that are already in the market in many applications are ethanol, which is one biofuel, as well as biodiesel, which uses vegetable oil as a part of its base. Any of the major websites on motor vehicles, Motor Trends, Edmunds, and others have a wealth of information on vehicles that are coming into the marketplace. And other federal agencies, such as the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, have websites that are devoted to vehicles that are coming into the marketplace, various ratings of those vehicles, characteristics.
To learn more about green tips and spirituality and money, go to our website. There you'll also find a complete resource list. You can also email us or call us with your comments at 713-743-8513. And that's our show for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Remember to live smart. I'm Patricia Gras. Have an abundant week.
For a transcript of this program, send $6.95 to the address on your screen. Please include the name of the guest.